I'm Melody Wiklund, and I'm an author of a few fantasy novels. My more recent fantasy novels have been adult fantasy. So here we have Heartstealer, which is a little bit of a fantasy mystery. Here we have A Wound Like Lapis Lazuli, which is kind of more like court intrigue, and it has some gods and some painters, and there's a lot of stuff going on. But today I was going to talk about 11 Dancing Sisters, which is a young adult fantasy. And this was actually the first novel that I ever wrote. I tried to write novels before it. I tried once during NaNoWriMo. I discovered I can write 50,000 words in a month, but it won't.
Of course, I should
It
have
will not
been
be a
here
novel.
2
It will
hours
not be
ago.
coherent. And I tried to start like a bunch of novels before that, but this was the first one that I actually managed to finish. Part of that, I think, was probably because this one is a fairy tale retelling. At the time, fairy tale retellings were super popular. I was reading stuff like the Lunar Chronicles, trying to remember what else there was those days. There was like Rosamund Hodge stuff like Cruel Beauty. So there were just a lot of fairy tale retellings going around, and I really like fairy tales. I read a ton of fairy tales when I was growing up, and I thought it might not be so hard to write a fairy tale retelling, because a lot of what I struggled with when I was trying to write novels was trying to come up with a plot that like would have stuff going on in the middle and have like a coherent structure. But if you're writing a fairy tale retelling, you can somewhat depend on the fairy tale to give you a lot of that structure. So when I first started writing 11 Dancing Sisters, it's a fairy tale retelling of the 12 Dancing Princesses, and I was relying a lot on the structure of 12 Dancing Princesses. But as I went along, it actually turned out to be a lot less like that. But I guess it sort of was good for me to lean on that to begin with, and then it changed more and more from the original fairy tale as it went on. So I was writing this book. I started it my senior year of high school, and then I wrote like a first draft that I probably finished early in college. And then I wrote like a second draft, a third draft, just kept on going. And I finally finished it, I think, my sophomore year of college. And I ended up publishing it with a small press. So that's kind of the backstory. And the story itself is, well, like I said, it's a retelling of 12 Dancing Princesses. If you don't know that story, it's basically about a soldier that follows these princesses into this underground castle and discovers that they've been like dancing at a fairy ball every night. And they wear out their dancing slippers. It's a whole thing. And what I wanted to change when I was doing the retelling was I thought it would be fun if instead of it being a soldier that was investigating this mystery of where the princesses go at night and like why they're wearing out their slippers, where are they wandering off to, I thought it would be fun if one of the sisters was investigating it instead, and she had been separated from her family and from all her other sisters who were going to the underground tunnels at night. She had been separated from them for some time. And also, I still wanted to keep the soldier aspect, sort of. So I made my princess, the reason that she's been separated from the other princesses is because she went off to join a war effort and she became a war nurse, running away from home. And I ended up giving her a lot of scarring on her face so that she could have a secret identity and none of her sisters would recognize her. And that ended up being a major plot element. And it sort of, because of that, it ended up also being kind of a story of like self-acceptance and like coming to accept all of the scarring on her face, the fact that she lost vision in one of her eyes. Because like there are people in the story, even like her love interest at first is kind of critical of her for like being so scarred and like being partly disabled now. But she is like still strong despite all that. And she comes to realize that even though it feels like there have been a lot of changes in her life, like she's still herself and she's still the same person and has the same drive that she's always had. So that's kind of what was going on in the story. So I'm going to read a section aloud. I figure I might as well just read the first few pages of the book. And I hope you enjoy it. So, For a fearsome fae, Lord Desmond Tyrann did not keep a very neat office. His desk was scattered with parchments, letters written in a script that to Erin was utterly indecipherable. She picked a couple up and squinted at them. She made the sign of the cross over one, wondering if that would cause the frustrating runes to change shape and lose their witchery. It had absolutely no effect. She had to concede that it had been a bit of a stretch to begin with. It was all very well for such things as crosses and cold iron to work against the fae in tales told by old nurses on the front lines. But in reality, nothing was ever so easy. Sighing, she opened the first drawer in his desk. Nothing much in there. A couple oddly shaped paperweights covered in dust and 2 inkwells, one filled with black liquid and one with silver. The second drawer was much the same, though the ink in that inkwell was scarlet. Her sisters were all in the ballroom. She had left them there, dancing with a variety of fae lords and ladies, perfectly at ease in a place that was otherworldly. When she had run away 3 years ago, they had all been proper to the point of absurdity, and now she came back and they didn't even flinch at dancing with fae. She closed the drawer with unnecessary violence, and got the trim of her cloak of invisibility caught in it. So hard to avoid when it was, after all, invisible. She heard footsteps in the hall. Who could it be? All the fae court should have been down in the ballroom, enjoying the festivities. Quickly, she extricated her cloak's hem from the drawer. The door to the office opened, and in stepped none other than Lord Desmond Tyrann himself. He was a thin man with long blonde hair braided down his back, an unwrinkled face, and a blue and silver jacket, similar to many of the other fae men she had seen thus far. She knew his name because he had been the one to greet the princesses when they arrived at this strange underground castle, kissing each of their hands. They had greeted him by name, and he had known their names as well. And she, lurking in the shadows and shielded from sight, had not much liked the familiarity. Another sign that what she had heard on the road was true. Her sisters were in over their heads, as if the fact that they were traveling through a tunnel in the middle of the night to attend a party with strangers was not sign enough. She stepped instinctively away from Desmond's desk. It was his space, and surely he would be furious to see her there. No, that was ridiculous. He couldn't know she was there. Not even a fae could see someone under an invisibility cloak. But as Lord Desmond closed the door behind him, his lips twitched into a smirk. Lady Anikla, I know you're in here. The name gave her a start. Not because it was hers. It wasn't. But because she had heard it spoken just a few days before. And how could he know that anyone was in there? She pulled the cloak tighter around herself and squeezed into the farthest corner of the room from him, against a bookshelf filled with scrolls and ancient tomes. Oh, come now. Lord Desmond stepped further into the room. You can't have believed I would miss an intruder in my castle. Its magic tells me of everyone who comes and goes. I could feel it the moment you stepped off Princess Kendra's rowboat. Besides, you're the only one with an invisibility cloak of such high quality. His gray eyes scanned the room from side to side. They came to rest on Erin's corner, and she shivered and pressed herself harder against the shelf. The ridges of the books hurt her back. His smile widened. Do take it off, my lady. You're a little old for hide-and-seek, don't you think? The only reason I didn't reveal you in the ballroom was that I thought it might embarrass you. It would be polite to return the consideration. Erin could hardly breathe. A step closer, then another, and he was standing right in front of the corner. He put one hand on the bookshelf and the other on the opposite wall, trapping her between his arms. He bent slightly, and she could feel his breath on her shaven head, stirring the hairs that had just begun to grow out of the left side of her scalp. No games, my lady. Fine then, no games. The strings that held her cloak on were tied in a doubled knot, but it only took a few seconds to pull them loose. She let the cloak drop to the ground, revealing her underneath it. Desmond neither moved nor spoke, but their heads were about a foot away from each other, and Erin could see his eyes widen for just a moment. Fae were used to surprises, and she doubted he was shocked that she was not Lady Anikla. But they were also used to beauty, and beauty was one thing Erin lacked. Her light brown nurse's robe clashed with the decadent tapestries on the walls. Her tattered sandals had left dirt on the brilliant blue rug, and then there was the crowning glory of her face. Desmond took a step back, perhaps to gain some artistic distance on the spectacle of Erin's appearance. He pursed his lips. I suppose you aren't a troll. What? Well, my initial reaction was that you were probably a troll, Desmond said, since I've never seen any other being with such a grotesque face. But there haven't been trolls around here for years, and when they were around, they would have had more sense than to snoop. Besides, they wouldn't have bothered with the eye patch. Erin automatically touched the white patch that covered her right eye, gently. Pressed down too hard, and it would hurt more than it was worth. It was to keep the light out of her eye, which was still sensitive despite being unable to see anymore. not because she wanted to protect the sensibilities of men like Desmond. She didn't care to impress anyone, and with the pale and wrinkled burn scar covering the right half of her body, clear up to her face and cratered scalp, it would have been a lost cause even if she'd been trying. Clearly, you're just a human sneaking around in a fake cloak, Desmond concluded, albeit the ugliest human I've ever seen. Clearly, you haven't seen many humans, Erin said. All right. I think that's enough. But that kind of gives you a sense of my protagonist, who is sneaking around in the castle, trying to investigate, and Desmond, who actually turns out to be your love interest later on, but he's kind of a jerk. Back then, I was really into love interests who were kind of jerks. I kind of still am. So you know what? I've not changed. So, yeah. Any questions?
I love how you have so much personality in both of them right from the beginning, and it just like infuses the way that they are.
Oh, thanks.
I like the fact that your main character isn't the perfect, beautiful person.
Well, I didn't want her to be like the perfect, beautiful protagonist, because back then when I was reading young adult books, there was a huge surge of like main characters who would be like, well, I'm not pretty like the other girls, but that would be like the main character's point of view, whereas everything in the plot would show that they actually were like the most generically pretty person ever, and like everyone would be in love with them, and they would be like, you just don't see it yourself. I don't know. So I wanted someone who actually, like, objectively wasn't conventionally attractive. But still, she ends up, like, finding love, and people still end up being attracted to her. So maybe I did that too.
Attracted through who she is, through
Yeah.
her personality.
Through her personality. I think, though, when you get to know someone, you end up finding them attractive even if they weren't beautiful to you initially.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
So, pretty quickly in the book, she's been like labeled ugly.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is that a continuing theme, or does her inner beauty shine out? Does her love interest sort of lose that opinion?
He doesn't.
It's pretty bold the way she's called ugly so quickly.
Yeah.
Just as before we know much about her.
Yeah. I mean, I guess he still calls her ugly for a lot of the book, which is because he likes being rude, and by a certain point he's kind of using it to flirt with her, even though it's like, you shouldn't flirt with someone like that. It's really rude, actually, and offensive. But he's just a jerk, so he likes teasing her. And he might not care so much about appearances, but if it's something that he can nag her about, then he'll do it. And also, like, she's very mysterious. She has a secret identity. There's not much that he knows about her, so there's a limited number of things that he can be nagging her about. Like, he can nag her about her appearance. He can nag her about the fact that she broke into his castle. And then that's like it. He doesn't know anything else about her.
The setup is that they're enemies to some extent.
They're enemies to some extent. But he does have kind of a hang-up on physical beauty, too. There's a certain point in the book where he sort of performs magic to see what she looked like before. And I think that he thinks that'll kind of snap him out of being attracted to her, because he's not sure why he's attracted to her when he objectively thinks she's kind of ugly. It doesn't really end up working that way, as you can probably guess.
Now, how does she view herself, though?
I think she doesn't really have, like, a lot of self-hate or insecurities, but she is, like, very conscious of the fact that, like, she's become heavily scarred because it's a recent change to her. So she's still adjusting to it. And she does feel like things in her life have changed a lot. But I don't think she was really that caught up in the pursuit of beauty to begin with.
So she doesn't hide herself throughout the book. And she is who she is, and that's who she is.
Yeah. Well, she hides the fact that she's a princess.
Right.
She does have a secret identity. But yes.
So she wears an eye patch, but she doesn't wear like a veil over her face.
No, it's just an eye patch. honestly, I just wanted her to have an eye patch because I thought eye patches were cool. But practically speaking, I was looking it up when I was writing the book. I was like, so why would people wear eye patches or sunglasses or whatever? Do they do that for aesthetic reasons? Is there another reason? Like, why do blind people do that? And it's not really for aesthetic reasons most of the time. It's because light sensitivity still affects people who've lost vision, and like more so than people with healthy vision. Like, it'll just hurt to have like the sun in your eye. So they'll wear like an eye patch or sunglasses or whatever for like, yeah, more like health reasons really. Yeah. So that's why she does it. But of course, because I thought that it was cool, Desmond ends up giving her this really fancy eye patch that has like a jewel on it that looks kind of like an eyeball, and it's very fancy.
But she doesn't like it.
She doesn't like it because she doesn't like him giving her random fancy stuff. They're enemies. She hates him.
But does she really?
But does she really? That's the question. Maybe not.
So, how were you drawn to this particular story? Because it's much lesser known in the fairy tale world.
I'm trying to remember. I think part of it was that I did want to do one that was like a bit lesser known. I kind of like the themes of family in it because like there's all the sisters, and it's easy to like develop the different sisters a lot. And I liked the mysterious underground castle. I thought that would be an interesting setting. There's also a lot of like magical trees in it. There's trees made out of gold and out of silver and out of diamonds. I just thought it was really pretty. I was like, yeah, I could write about that.
Have you thought about doing sequels about the other sisters?
I was originally going to do a sequel, but I kind of lost steam on it. Also, the thing was, when I was originally writing this book, it had a particular ending to it, which was very much a cliffhanger. Then when I ended up getting it published, it was with a small press, and they were like, please don't do this to us.
Oh.
So I changed the ending, which meant that the original sequel idea I had didn't really work anymore. But more than that, it was just the fact that, like, I mean, I had started writing it in high school, and I feel like when I was in college, my interests were really changing a lot. As I matured, I got kind of more interested in writing adult fantasy versus young adult anyway. So I still had some ideas that I could use on a sequel to it, but...
It gives you a pause moment. Pause and...
Okay, this is
Gee,
freaky.
this is, yeah,
What's going on?
it's a little weird. Let's hope it wasn't an accident or something.
I'm still going with the fade on like I was talking about.
Yeah, that's probably it.
Getting back
We
where you
should've
start
known
revealing
better.
these
You didn't
secrets.
realize that the castle's underneath us.
I don't know.
You've revealed the secret.
How much of it was about when you originally were writing it? How important was it that they'd be okay? Fairy tales can have all kinds of royals or witches or whatever. How important was it to you to have a whole fairy land, like a fairy castle and fairy people in it,
I don't know.
versus
Not really.
princesses and
I wanted there to be royalty because I thought princesses were cool. I don't know if the fairies were actually that important.
Yes, you can still
All right.
okay, you
Melody,
have it back now.
Thank you.
What's the king's involvement in the
Yeah, I won't be able to run a
Golden
card,
Days?
but we can still do
Is there a
cash.
king that's
There
trying
is
to
a king.
Yeah, what are the parents
We
doing
have
while the
mechanical
girls are out
sales.
warming the night?
Well,
Or
Unbelievable.
their bodyguards for that matter.
Oh, yeah.
to the original fairy tale, the king has been concerned because princesses keep on wearing out their slippers mysteriously overnight and they go around exhausted all day. So he's actually proclaimed like a challenge for like anyone to show up and solve the mystery of what is going on with his daughters, and anyone who figures it out can marry one of them.
Yeah,
Of course,
that's it.
Yeah. That's what's going on.
She doesn't get any say in this.
Yeah.
Just pick one. I got 11. I got 12 of them.
Yeah,
I mean,
they
yeah,
get to
there's
pick
12,
one, right?
so
Yes.
someone will be up for it.
Does someone get married?
Huh?
That's the end. Yeah, we don't
Is
give
that
no
the-
spoilers.
I don't.
In the
Spoilers?
fairy tale, in the original fairy tale,
Yeah,
you
the
can
soldier
tell.
ends up marrying someone. And in some versions, he marries the oldest sister. In some versions, he marries the youngest. He never marries the middle sister. 'Cause no
No,
one
of
cares about middle siblings.
Middle siblings were all forgotten.
It's kind of sad.
It's like being a Gen Xer. Just leave us alone.
Mm.
You didn't answer the question.
What?
So that's what happens in that fairy tale. What
Why
about
should I
what
tell you
about the
these
king and
things?
queen of this fairy tale? If you don't, you don't have to
already know
answer the
anyway.
question. Yes, but I noticed that you didn't
Okay,
answer the
fine.
question.
I'll answer the question. So the father is still doing the same thing, but the mother is dead,
Oh,
which is sad, and turns out to be plot relevant.
Well, again, you're addressing family issues. She leaves home and she misses her mother's last years. You know,
It's
She had
true. Her
12
mother
children.
died very recently,
12 girls, huh? No
which
boys?
turns out to be plot relevant. But I'm trying not to actually spoil
She
it.
It
didn't leave
sounds
that part out.
like your family, all girls.
But yeah, the king's still doing the exact same thing, and I don't think it's really a good idea.
and neither does Aaron.
No one does.
so is it a spoiler to say why the one daughter left the household and went off to war?
Yeah,
She's just wild like that.
Mhm.
I don't know. She didn't have a very good reason. Sometimes people run away from home to become soldiers or nurses.
It is
I think,
examined in the book.
yeah,
It's
it's just been a while
Is
since
she
I
the
read it.
oldest?
I think that she fought a lot
No,
with
she's
her
the
parents and hated being a princess, as young adult princesses do. And she wanted to go contribute to the war effort.
Mhm.
So that was why she ran away.
Put the flashlight down low
She
so
didn't
it's
get-
not shining.
She didn't get wounded or anything in the war.
She
Oh,
did.
she did.
Oh yeah,
She
that's
pretty
a big-
obviously
yeah.
did.
Is that from being in the war?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
She was like in a tent that got set on fire,
Oh,
and it like
gosh.
fell on top of her.
She's one whole
She
side
got all
of her
kinds
body.
of fires, burn scars all over her body.
So she's
So,
not so
yeah.
much a hero, but she's a victim.
I would call her a hero. I mean, she did nursey things.
She was there because
So-
she was caring for wounded soldiers.
Yeah, she was doing
Okay.
good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you may not remember, but do you think your version changed any from when you first started it to when you get to the published version, besides the publisher changes?
It did change a lot.
You did.
My very first draft, like I said, was very similar to 12 Dancing Princesses. And what I realized when I was like, I don't know, like 10,000 words in or something, was that it started way too slow. And that it also, like, the characters didn't have much personality. They were just kind of doing things according to the structure of the story because this is what they do. So then I dumped that and started a rewrite that started with this scene that I just read. Instead of doing like a whole beginning where, oh, Erin's coming home from war, oh, she got an invisibility cloak, oh, she hears about stuff going on with her sisters. So instead, I just started with her already in the castle because we don't need all that prologue. And then I wrote that version, and when I reread that version, I was like, okay, well, things are happening at a better pace, but I still think everyone's still a little bit too cold and just doing stuff. And I think it would be great if everyone was kind of a worse person because we need more conflict, we need more drama. And that's when Desmond became this much of a jerk. He used to be kind of okay. And then, yeah, everything got more heated and everyone got more of an emotional wreck. That was this draft. And then my final edits were mostly, apart from changing the ending, it was mostly just stuff like, you used the word said 5,000 times. Or there was one part where Erin was planning something and I originally had it hidden in the book that she was planning that until like a big reveal.
Mhm.
And the editor I was working with was like, you feel really disconnected from Erin reading this point because you can't tell what she's thinking at all.
Mhm.
And I was like, you're probably right. It's not really worth losing the connection to the character just to get the big plot twist.
Mhm.
So I made it a little bit clearer what she was planning. I didn't give all the details, but I gave some details. So that you kind of knew at least emotionally where she was at instead of just being like, well, now it's been 20 pages and I don't know where her head's at all. So it was a bit less of a plot twist then, but people are always telling me this, that like I will do this plot twist and it'll seem like it comes out of nowhere because I just stopped telling anything that my character was thinking for a certain number of pages. And I'm like, you're right, I shouldn't have done that. It's not worth it. So those are the basic changes that I made from one draft to the next to the next to the next.
Just with your flashlight.
All right.
Oh, I am gonna see what I can find
Do we do Lisa in the
for
dark?
Essie Hinton.
Maybe we find out whether there's hope. I mean, don't know
Well,
what
before
they
we
know.
switch over to me, did you want to talk about your newest book?
Oh yeah,
We could do that.
sure. So my newest book is Heartstealer. It is not a fairy tale retelling. It is not young adult. However, it still does have some kind of magical creatures going around. We have this
Didn't know
cursed
you guys were
assassin
following me.
who has this curse that's
No, I
been
just
passed
worry about
down
people tripping
from
over
like
things.
generation to generation.
It's easier
Where
if I.
whoever kills the assassin becomes the next cursed
Okay, so I
assassin.
have that. That would be
Uh, We also have some ghosts. Very briefly, there's a dragon. There's a pretty. You forget the dragon? The dragon
Oh,
doesn't
yes.
matter. It's just there. And there's also a witch who's pretty important. So we do have a lot of fantasy creatures. And the basic plot of this book is there's this guy, and he used to be in love with this woman, and they had a relationship. And he's kind of a nobleman of sorts. And unexpectedly, he broke off their relationship completely and was suddenly engaged to someone else. So she gets mad about that, because why wouldn't you? And she hires the cursed assassin to kill him. But when the cursed assassin, well, it's really the assassin's apprentice goes to kill him and discovers that she can't, because she stabs him and he just straight up like doesn't bleed. And after some investigation, they discover he doesn't have a heartbeat, he doesn't have a pulse. So like, what's going on with him? And it turns out that his heart has been removed by magic, probably by someone who's trying to control him. And this might be the reason why he suddenly broke up with this woman and doesn't seem to have any feelings for her anymore. Because if you steal someone's heart, you can kind of control their emotions. So, and the rest of the book is kind of about trying to find the heart, and sort of dealing with the cursed assassin situation, because the assassin still wants to kill him. Like, the woman who's in love with him kind of tries to call it off, but you can't really call off the cursed assassin. So that's also an issue. And that's basically what goes on in this book.
Intriguing.
There's a lot of murder. People do get killed. It's a good time.
So where did that idea come from?
It actually started as fan fiction. It was going to be fan fiction for, I think, like Phantom of the Opera. It's not like that anymore. It changed completely. Well, that was kind of why I didn't end up writing as that, because I realized sometimes I come up with fan fiction ideas and I'm like, this has nothing to do with the actual work you were basing it off anymore. So then I just take like the basic idea I had and create new characters to do it with. But yeah.
That's kind
But
of
I don't
surprising.
remember why I was going to write it like as Phantom of the Opera fan fiction or where it came from anymore. Because that was a while ago. Even though I wrote it recently, I had the idea first probably like 5 or 6 years ago. So
Yeah, I find a lot with my fan fiction that it'll start out being pretty true to course, and then it will just veer so wildly that I just turn it into a standalone story.
yeah, like it came to a certain point where I was like, the cursed assassins and like the random love triangles. None of this is really Phantom of the Opera. None of it was. So I was like, we're not gonna do that.
Well, I've got to say that having heard about this book
Mhm.
and just kind of from the cover,
Mhm.
and you talking about this man's heart has literally been stolen,
Uh-huh.
I really assumed there was some surgery.
There was. It was removed.
You said it was by magic.
Yeah, they did magical surgery. You can't just remove someone's heart and have him still alive without magic. But yeah, it's not like we described the ritual, but my assumption is that they like cut him open and they took it out.
It's not laparoscopic or anything.
What?
Laparoscopic on a
through
heart.
the nose.
No, I don't think so.
Oh, he's got a big scar.
He just reaches
He
in,
does
grabs
actually,
it, and pulls
yeah.
it out.
He has a scar on his chest. You can see
when
it.
you said magic, I was thinking it was
No.
just like,
No, they had to take it out.
That would be a dangerous world to live in.
like metaphorically, his
The
heart
evil
was
queen
taken out.
reached in, grabbed
Oh,
it,
it's
and
No,
pulled it out.
magic.
No, they took it out. They took it out.
So I have a question about. Oh dear, I forgot my question. About your story ideas. Okay,
Yeah,
this is my
yeah.
question.
Okay, let's go.
I knew it was a little more general. How many story ideas do you discard and don't end up writing very
Most
much?
of them.
Okay.
Most of them. Let me think.
Hundreds.
Yeah. I mean, say over the course of writing one novel, which might take like, say, 1 to 4 years. If it takes like 1 year, then I'm probably discarding like maybe 5 ideas that I seriously considered. But if it takes like 4 years, it's going to be a lot more than that.
Mm-hmm.
And these are like ideas that I seriously thought about and like outlined and stuff. Because if I included like every idea that I was like, huh, that'd be cool, then that's like, you have one of those every day. So like, what are you going to do? You can't write all of those. It's impossible.
I hope you keep the outlines.
Well, Curtis does.
I do. Sometimes I,
have a
lose
folder.
them.
I have a folder on my computer. Sometimes it's
Curtis,
one
you can
line.
do it.
Yeah.
I have writing
Just
writing
try.
in progress and writing ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's one line, sometimes it's a character.
That's how I hear music. What musicians are like, they'll just come up with a phrase, they'll write it down,
Yeah.
and build on it later.
One day I'll go back and look.
Inspirations.
My uncle was an artist and he would paint half a painting, and then when someone commissioned him, he'd go back to, wait a second, I already painted something like that, find it and finish it.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
You go, heart stealer.
Well, how about the third one?
Oh, the third one. So the third one is a wound like Lapis Lazuli. I like this one.
Oh, it should. I just need
This
to find
one is about these 2 painters, and they're in a setting that kind of based off Baroque Spain. And one of them was originally going to paint the ceiling of this temple dedicated to a sea goddess. And he was like commissioned by the king. But he unexpectedly got kidnapped. And so he could not do it. Because he'd been kidnapped, he couldn't do it. But no one knows he'd been kidnapped. They just know that he's gone mysteriously missing. So the king asks other artists to try painting the sea goddess, and whoever can do the best job of it, he'll give the job of painting the ceiling of the temple. So the second painter ends up joining that competition, and she's trying to paint the sea goddess, and she's trying and she's trying. And bad things keep on happening while she's doing it. Like, she has this accident where she like slices her hand open. She will be trying to stretch a canvas and the canvas will refuse to stretch. She'll be painting and she'll come back to it after a night away and all the paint will have like dripped off the canvas, and she's like, why? So these things keep on happening to her until eventually she realizes that she's sort of being haunted by the sea goddess herself. And the sea goddess wants sort of a say in like the way that she's doing the painting. And sort of ends up kind of possessing her. Meanwhile, there's stuff going on with the painter who was kidnapped. He has his own whole plot line. He was kidnapped by an enemy of the king, who happens to be this woman who's kind of interested in him, but he doesn't feel that way about her. It's very dramatic. So that's all the stuff that goes on in there, and I wrote that.
No spoilers.
It also has some illustrations in it. This one, it's a bit different because it has illustrations.
Nice.
I don't know if you can see them in the dark, but I'll show you one anyway.
Can you explain the title?
No. Okay, I will. So you can't see it, can you?
Yes, we can.
Oh, good. Nice. Well, the title. Remember how she gets like sliced on the hand during one of those incidents? Well, the hand gets kind of like magically affected and it starts like glowing blue. So it's very literally a wound like Lapis Lazuli, because Lapis Lazuli is blue. But specifically Lapis Lazuli because Lapis Lazuli ground up was used for ultramarine paint. And that's the kind of paint that she's using to try to paint like the sea aspects of this sea goddess. It's very expensive paint. It's very pretty.
So what was your inspiration for this story?
I just wanted to write about a bunch of painters. Originally, I was going to write a series of like romances about a bunch of painters.
Mhm.
But then I was like in Spain for like a month, and I was seeing all these really nice cathedrals and landscapes and stuff, and I was like, I should set it in Spain.
Oh, okay.
Except like fictionalized Spain because it didn't suit like aspects of what I wanted to do. But I sort of based it off Spain for that reason. However, while I was there, I was like, all of these separate ideas about artists that I had, I could make them into one interconnected series with an ongoing plot. And then I started writing that, and I wrote the first book, and I started the second book. I came to the abrupt realization there was not enough plot for 3 books. I was like, there's not at all enough plot for 3 books. Not even slightly.
Mhm.
So then I just took the plot of all 3 books and smashed it together. And then it was just one book.
Mhm.
It's this book. But like there were whole characters that I was like, these 2 characters perform about the same function.
Mhm.
You could just put them together and make it the same character. It would be perfectly fine.
Mhm.
So I did that. Because there just wasn't enough for a series. I'm always intending to write series and then I don't. So,
Does this
but I think
book
it works a
have
lot better
happy
as a single
ending?
book. Huh?
Does this book have a happy ending?
Oh yes, very happy ending.
Yes.
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Nothing bad ever happens. in
Do all your
books.
books have happy endings?
Maybe. Depends on your point of view.
A lot of times fairy tales aren't happy endings, right?
That's kind of true, actually. But these aren't fairy tales.
Okay.
Only this one is. This one has a pretty happy ending. Although, debatable. But they're all kind of happy endings.
Okay. Tough question.
Why would I make a bad thing happen in my books?
This is the person who scars half of the heroine's entire body.
Not all books need happy endings.
Listen, if some people die along the way, it's okay. It's still a happy book.
Get their hand cut off.
I don't. Oh, that does happen.
Ahem.
Okay, we won't talk about that.
Oh, we can't talk about the handbook?
Oh,
Coming
that one.
Coming soon.
Oh, okay. There's multiple books where people get their hands cut off. Yeah, I'm working on a project right now that has a disembodied hand. But that's fine. It's not a sad thing. The hand's doing okay. The hand's disembodied. It can function on its own. And the person's also doing fine. Sort of. She's been kidnapped by fairies. And that's okay. Probably.
She seems to be enjoying herself sometimes.
Yeah, she's mostly enjoying herself. She's going on a journey of self-discovery.
The hand?
Yeah, the hand too. Everyone is.
So when is that book coming out?
Oh, I don't know. I originally thought that I could finish the second draft this spring, but that's not going to happen. So, theoretically, I would still like to finish the second draft this summer. And then in that case, I would guess that I could publish it either late next winter or early next spring. But also, I don't know. Because
Does
usually editing takes a lot longer than
Does
I
it
think.
have a title yet?
No.
Does it have a working title?
No. No, it
Looking
doesn't.
forward to seeing the cover art.
I've been calling it, the document's called Caesar and Annie novels. That's just two of the characters' names. That's not a title.
We just call it the disembodied hand when we want to ask about it.
I feel like it should be a hand pun. The title
You
should be a
guys
hand
have
pun.
heard some of it, right, in your
Oh,
writing
yes.
group?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we could have a competition for interesting hand puns.
That's true. That could be fun.
Yeah.
You should
I-
post like on TikTok
I
and
should.
Instagram
I
and say,
should.
what kind of hand puns should I include?
Please give me some hand puns.
No strings attached, just ideas.
Yeah. I should do that. I need a good hand pun. But I don't know yet. All I can think of is stuff like hand in glove or like a bird in the hand. None of this is relevant to
The
my
sound
book.
of one hand clapping.
Oh, sure.
It's a good one. For your
Many
hand
hands
bonding.
make life. Oh dear, no.
But there's
no.
not many hands. Idle hands do the devil's work.
Ah,
That would
there
be
we
a cool
go.
one.
Disembodied hands.
I don't know if that gives the correct impression,
Well,
Mhm.
but yeah. So that's
Can you give me a hand?
yeah.
A handbook.
That's what I keep on almost saying to
easy.
people.
That is an easy one.
Yeah.
The handbook.
I could just call it that. I don't think that would go well.
I think you'd have to be very careful about the cover design so that the wrong people aren't buying it.
Yeah,
Lots to think
a
about.
handy man. It's not a man though. A handy woman. All right, we're good.
That would be an unhandy woman, I think.
I guess.
So why did disembodied hands, or maybe not disembodied, why do chopped off hands seem to feature in your stories?
Well, in one of them, the hand gets chopped off towards the end, so I'm not going to go into that.
Well, I was thinking more
But-
like from a writer's point of view, not from a plot point of view.
Oh, okay. Even apart from like chopped off hands, I've noticed that I write a lot of characters who, in some way, are like missing body parts.
Okay.
Like Aaron is minus a working eye.
Yep.
He's missing a heart.
Mhm.
The main character in my current project is missing a hand. And I don't really know why. I guess maybe it's like symbolism of the fact that people have lost something or have changed in some way, because it's a very easy way to like physically show something changing or
Damaged.
something missing. But I have to be careful when I'm writing that kind of thing, because I don't want to be ableist about it, really.
Mhm.
Like, I don't want to imply that if you lose a body part, then you become an unwhole person.
Mhm.
Because that's not true, except in like the physical way, technically. But yeah, it works well as like symbolism of an obvious physical change in someone. And also, in a fairy tale way, I think that is something that will happen a lot, where it's like, oh, this person is missing a finger, let's find the finger. Or, the giant has removed their heart, you can't kill them without finding the heart. That's kind of where this one came from with the missing heart, is all the stories of like sorcerers who remove their hearts so you can't kill them. But yeah, I just seem to write a lot about that kind of thing. I don't know, it is interesting.
Do you have a thought of what you want to work on next? Is there something lurking in the wings?
There's so many things. Yeah. Let me see. There's a couple. There was one I wanted to write about these 3 legendary swords, where anyone who has all 3 of them is supposed to become like the king or the emperor or something of this country. And there's this guy. He's just a wanderer, like a typical wandering knight or tramp. And he's a really good swordsman. So he was able to retrieve the first sword, and he brought it to the court because he doesn't want to become the king. He has no interest in that. And he gave it to, like, the crown prince. But when he tried to give it to the crown prince, he had to give it to, like, a court functionary instead because he couldn't meet with the crown prince. He was like, okay, I guess that's just how it is. I'm going back to my wandering.
Mm-hmm.
Later on, he retrieved a second legendary sword. And he brought that one to the court. This time, unexpectedly, he got to meet the crown prince. It was great. He was so excited. Crown prince was like, oh, wow, I'm so glad that this time, when someone retrieved a legendary sword, I can find out who it is. Last time, they just mysteriously vanished, and no one has any idea who it is at all. And so our guy is kind of like looking at the court functionary. Her functionary is like glaring daggers at him because for some reason he just wanted to get all the credit for getting the sword. So he's like, well, this guy is known for being ruthless. He's going to get me murdered if I stay at this court like the crown prince wants me to. So he disappears off into the mist. So then our story actually starts with him in the vicinity of the third sword. He just happens to run into the crown prince, who is also hunting down the third sword. Crown prince is like, why did you just vanish on me? And they go on adventures together.
Right. Do they fall in love?
They fall in love.
Aww.
They fall in love. And eventually they get the third sword.
Mhm.
But they kind of have to do some court intrigue stuff too.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's what I want to write. But I don't know if that's actually the one I'm going to write because I have like 5 ideas or something. I don't know. But yeah.
Sounds good.
It's
You
based off a dream I had.
Oh, neat.
It came to me in a dream.
Well, that's very neat. Did you like wake up and write it right down?
I think I tried to make it make sense for a while and then I wrote it down. But yeah, pretty much. Like, it's funny because the court functionary in particular was in the dream. And like the whole scene of them just kind of looking at each other awkwardly. That was the main point of the dream. And I was the guy looking for the swords.
Okay.
It's an awkward position to be in. Yeah, were there any other questions, I guess?
I guess, so where can people find you?
Oh, yeah. So, you can find my books online, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever. You can find me at my website, which is melodywiklund.wordpress.com. Or you can find me on Instagram or on TikTok, and it's just at Melody Wiklund with no spaces or dashes or anything. Just at Melody Wiklund. You can also find my books at some local bookstores. I'm going to leave a couple copies here at Annie's Bookstop, and you can also find them at Book Lovers Gourmet and at Tatnut Books. So you have options.
Well, thank you.